Hello, I'm Hopkinton Tech Librarian Danielle, and I'm joined by our teen librarian Anne for YA Lit Bits, a short show where we'll feature old and new teen books that are perfect for binging.
Each of our sessions will discuss one topic in YA Lit and should be about 20 to 30 minutes long. Today, we're going to be talking about LGBTQ books in the world of YA literature. Not surprising, the rise of LGBTQ in YA follows a path similar to the rise of the genre of YA Lit itself. So I'd like to begin with a little history. The first LGBTQ book written specifically for teens was published in 1969. And if that date sounds familiar, if you remember from our history of YA Lit, that's because it's the date most people identify sort of as the birth of young adult literature. So this particular book was by John Donovan and was called I'll Get There, It Better Be Worth the Trip, and was actually awarded a Newbery Honor. But remember, this is before the creation of the Prince Award, which honors teen lit. So the Newbery Honor still existed then. So this actually won a Newbery Honor. The book featured a male teen at a new school whose friendship with a boy later turns sexual and is discovered. Because of this, the main character experiences guilt and feels like he's being punished for his actions. You will see that this outcome in the book becomes a trend in teen queer fiction during the 70s. The 70s featured a few more lesbian, gay, and questioning novels for teens, like Run Softly, Go Fast by Barbara Wurzba. In this story, a straight male teen, accused of being gay, joins the army and is killed in action. This theme of negative and tragic results from being gay or acting upon one's feelings permeated teen novels of the time. LGBTQ characters were often doomed to be punished in some way, often tragically, in car crashes, suicides, or enforced psychiatric or mental treatments. During the period, there were almost no teen books with bisexual or trans characters, and rare ones with queer teens of color. Ruby by Rosa Guy, published in 1976, was notable for its queer teen girl of color as a protagonist.
So the theme of life punishing you for being bad is not a new or even a new-ish one in literature. The first written stories, like the Iliad and Odyssey of Greek mythology, often focus on rewarding good characters and punishing bad characters. In fact, that's the basic plot of almost every myth, legend, or folktale that I've ever heard of, and it hasn't stopped today. What has changed are the actions or traits that we think are worthy of punishment or reward. So it's interesting to note in the past, things like being LGBTQ, being sexually active, being a scientist, and being a woman have all been considered things worthy of punishment. And this is also a really good place to reflect on how far we've come, but also how far we have to go.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, you still see the list of banned and challenged books every year. And I would say often a number of them feature LGBTQ characters. So we do still have a ways to go. The 1980s, however, saw a rise in what we think of as coming out stories for teens and began to steer a bit away from the punishment theme that we were talking about, which is good. One of the best-known LGBTQ books of the time is Annie on My Mind by Nancy Garden, published in 1982. This revolutionary book featured two lesbian characters who not only survive any tragic ending, but whose love also survives and still exists at the story's conclusion. A number of LGBTQ teen books focused on coming out to friends or family, or featured straight teens struggling to accept whoever was coming out as gay. Now, the 1990s, here comes a change. However, I would like to point out this is only, 20 or 30 years ago, did see some real breakthroughs in LGBTQ teen lit. For the first time, books began to feature bisexuality, and stories were told through the eyes of the queer characters themselves. There were also more books with gay protagonists who dealt with other issues besides being queer, and who often explored these other issues with both gay and straight characters. For example, in 1997, Hello, I Lied by M.E. Carr featured a gay teen struggling with his attraction to a girl. In 1999, In the Year They Burned the Books, also by Nancy Garden, who we mentioned before, a group of students, including a lesbian, her best friend, and other characters, fought censorship with their school newspaper. And Jacqueline Woodson published several books with LGBTQ characters of color. And AIDS also appeared in YA literature for the first time. So progress is being made. The 2000s saw real maturity and expansion of LGBTQ teen literature, with transgender characters and explorations of more gender and sexual diversity. And the field has been going strong since then. There are award-winning authors who focused almost exclusively on LGBTQ teens, but there has also been a growth of YA authors who feature and embrace LGBTQ characters in their novels as part of their desire to portray authentic and real voices. These characters are unique, individual, and do not serve as merely token queers in stories. And their sexual identity is only one part of what makes them who they are. Inclusions of these characters create stronger, more realistic, more compelling, and frankly, more entertaining books being published for teens across a spectrum of literary genres. Authors are now free to take bigger risks with their characters, and they explore the complexities of all kinds of identity in YA lit.
So I'd like to point out that this means that, again, I am one of the oldest people alive who had access to books about three-dimensional queer teens when growing up. This is a new thing, guys. And I would argue that the media we consume in our teens does a lot to shape the adults we become. Now, I am definitely not saying that every straight adult over the age of 40 is homophobic, but I am saying that straight people who had access to books that portray LGBTQ characters in sympathetic lights are more likely to sympathize with those characters and with LGBTQ folks who may be around them. And for people who are LGBTQ, it can be a breath of fresh air and really comforting to feel seen in the media they consume, especially if those portrayals are not all about how bad it is to be LGBTQ.
Yes, and this sort of goes along with what we mentioned in our last session on empathy and seeing oneself in a mirror instead of watching through a window. So it's important, remember we mentioned, for teens of all kinds to be able to look in the mirror and see themselves represented in the literature. These are important changes in literature. There are several noteworthy authors who publish books that primarily feature queer characters. One is David Levithan, known for his novels Boy Meets Boy and Two Boys Kissing. But he also explores what love means in his Everyday series, as a character awakens each day in a new body, male or female, gay or straight, and what this means for our definitions of love. Author Bill Koenigsberg combines humor and romance in his contemporary novels that feature queer and straight characters. And Nina LaCour often writes of complex lesbian characters dealing with things like grief, depression, and mental health. And Adam Silveira is perhaps the most well-known up-and-coming author of teen queer fiction. And his new novel, Infinity Sun, moves him into the world of fantasy from usually what he writes, realistic contemporary fiction. And another thing I love about all of these writers is they often collaborate with other teen authors to publish novels or anthologies. David Levithan, I know, has written with Rachel Cohn. He's written with John Green. So they often combine, and David Levithan is also actually a pretty well-known publisher in the world of YA lit. So he's been very influential in this field. So having said all that, we are really now in a rich period of YA literature, and queer characters appear in so many books by a variety of authors and a variety of genres. Authors like Leigh Bardugo, Maggie Stiefvater, Lindsay Miller, Sarah Glenn Marsh, and Amy Rose Capetta write fantasy and science fiction with all kinds of characters, gay and straight. There are teen mystery writers like Rebecca Podos and Caleb Roerig who feature queer characters, and plenty of realistic fiction by writers like Becky Albertalli, Ashley Herring Blake, Julie Murphy, Meredith Russo, and I.W. Gregorio with queer protagonists. And there are amazing titles by diverse authors who feature queer characters. Writers like Brandy Colbert, Nick Stone, Adib Khorram, and Sabina Khan. There are even award-winning graphic novels with queer characters, notably Kiss Number 8 and Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which actually won several awards this past year. And just as we have seen contemporary themes from YA teen literature trend a bit younger and appear in middle school and middle grade fiction, LGBTQ fiction is no different. Some titles appropriate for this age range include Lillian Duncan, which features a trans character, Redwood and Ponytail, about two girls falling in love, and The Best at It, about a gay Indian American boy. You can see that LGBTQ teen lit has come a long way since the 1970s and the problem novels with those very tragic, sad endings. So that was a brief discussion of LGBTQ YA authors and literature. In our next session, we will examine body and neurodiversity in YA books.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on the library's social media pages. Be sure to like and follow us to get notifications about all of our LitBit videos, as well as lots of other cool stuff we've got. And of course, if you want more LitBits, do not join our LitBit group. I'm going to have to cut that.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and happy reading.